So we all know about the brand RHUDE. It's just the epitome of the whole luxury brand aesthetic. And now you probably wondered to yourself, how can I charge $1,000 for a t-shirt? Today I'm going to show you guys exactly how to make a design like RHUDE properly. Now, if you don't plan, you plan on failing. That's why we have a mood board here. Basically, the design aesthetic we're going to go with is the whole race car, NASCAR aesthetic, because it's very easy to get into with any sort of brand and thus brand name. For this project, I'm just going to go with the brand name RHUDE and start designing. Basically, we're going to create 4 primary logos and then a sleeve design. Essentially, the logos are going to be inspired by each one of these gas station sort of graphics, mainly because it takes the thinking out of the project and makes you focus more on the architectural structure of each logo design. So I want you to focus more so on the shapes that acquire that vintage sort of look and try to tailor it towards your brand name. For this first one, we're going with the font Prior. So basically, once you've got your font and you're happy with it, I want you to go ahead and go into the tools box, which is usually to the left. If it's not open, go into your windows and open the tools box. Make sure it's the Pro. Grab the ellipse tool and go ahead and make a ellipse of some sort. Once you have this sort of shape, you're going to want to grab another one and you're going to want to put it into the center. Now, don't worry about getting it perfectly aligned at first, because you can just use the alignment tools. And the way you do that is just highlight both of them, go into the alignment tools, which is in your properties panel, and select them both. Make sure they're aligned vertically and horizontally to make them perfectly straight, and ensure it's aligned to the key subject and not the artboard so it doesn't disappear. Go ahead and select the eyedropper tool just to grab the background of the artboard so you can see what you're working with. And from here, you can go ahead and grab the selection tool and just kind of warp it until it has the sort of shape from our reference above. Once you're happy with the warp, I want you to align it one more time and go ahead and make a duplicate. From here, you can go into your Pathfinder and make it cut out using one of the Pathfinder tools to make it cut out. From here, press Command Y so you can see that your shape is actually working properly and it's not 2 shapes. It's one shape now that we've used the Pathfinder. Get a color that stands out a bit so you can start working around the text and make it suited towards the logo that we're going with. So now that we got our primary contrast color, I want you to go ahead and grab the Shape Builder tool, press Shift M and fill that color in the middle, and we're going to go ahead and select the contrast color that suits the logo, and then we're going to start playing with the text. Go ahead and make a duplicate of your font, arrange and bring that one to the front if it's not already at the front. And I want you to go ahead and play with the kerning. Make sure it's -100. Reason being is we want all them letters to connect in a sort of way. With the E, I want you to go ahead and ungroup everything. Select the E with the direct selection tool, not the selection tool, and then the selection tool, and hold Shift while you're dragging upwards to make it a bit larger. Now keep in contrast the font of RHUDE, because we're going to be making like a race car sort of graphic that's like moving fast. You know that motif of using lines to insinuate speed? That's basically what we're doing here. And once we've got it like this, I want you to go ahead and ungroup everything so you can go ahead and select RHUDE, and select those letters and use the selection tool because it's now ungrouped, and make it a bit smaller and align it perfectly in the middle of the text. Once that's complete, use the Pathfinder to make it all one object and make a duplicate, where we're going to make a offset. Now, once you've got your font like this, I want you to make a duplicate of this, and then go ahead and head over to Object, Path, Offset Path, and I want you to set your offset to around 6. Press Preview so you can actually see it, because 15 was way too large. That's why I say 6. And once you've got that, press OK. Select it all one more time and go to the Pathfinder tool and make it one object. From here, I want you to keep this color yellow, and I want you to press Command Y and get rid of all those center spaces using the direct selection tool and the delete button. Now this just gives it a more complete effect or look, but it looks perfectly fine as it did before. So if you don't want to add any offsets, it's up to you. At this point, it's mainly just semantics and grabbing the font and making sure it looks pretty. From here, I want you to select a contrast color of your actual design so you can see it on top of the offset, and then you can be like, yeah, that looks good, you know? Appreciate the work you've just put in, because now you've made a complete logo. Once you've got it perfectly aligned, you're complete. Go ahead and add any colors that you want, any outlines you want, but for now I'm going to keep it like this and maybe add a bit of a white outline to complete it, but that's about it. Now let's go ahead and talk about today's sponsor, which is Made in China. A lot of you guys have been asking me, where do I get my clothes manufactured? Well, Made in China is a solution for everything in terms of production. Everything from a comprehensive strategy, powerful search engine, which allows you to get all your manufacturing needs. So you can go ahead and get a manufacturer for buttons, or you can go ahead and get a manufacturer from start to finish, depending on what you're looking for in terms of production. In addition to security, they have online trade assurance and also secure payment to ensure that whatever you're making in terms of payment, you're getting your product, and they ensure that you get your product for productions. So that's a huge hassle that you can lift off your shoulders. They also have supplier qualification verification and also logistics safety to ensure that your products are coming to you, and you ensure that the person who's making your products is actually making your products. This is completely amazing. In all that being said, you can ensure that they have a reliable service in terms of production, rather than shooting in the dark and trying to find manufacturer via email or Instagram or stuff like that. Your manufacturer has everything for you on this one website, Made in China. Now they have golden sourcing season going on. This means that if you have a product that requires a little bit more in terms of specialty in production, whether you have a technical that isn't gonna be completed by any regular manufacturer, the golden sourcing season is your time to get in and get your templates or technicals ready for production. Check out the first link in the description to get started with Made in China. Let's get right into design 2. I want you to grab a nice simple font. Harbinger works perfectly fine for this. And I want you to go ahead and introduce a rectangular tool, or rectangular shape sort of, that's outlined. From here, I want you to go ahead and grab your selection tool. Go ahead and find an anchor point while holding shift and go ahead and select that. Press 45 degrees and press copy. Now you can press Command D and it'll rotate that copy multiple times, because copy means duplicate in Illustrator. From here, I want you to go ahead and introduce an ellipse, and I want you to separate it from this design. Why we're going to separate it? Because we're going to go ahead and group this, and then we're going to introduce this back. And once we've introduced it, we're going to align it with the alignment tool. Now this is essentially going to create the basis of our gear, and this gear is going to go ahead and make logo number 2. Now, using your direct selection tool, I want you to select the inside of the gear, because we're going to go ahead and round it off just a bit to make it look, I guess, a bit more complete in terms of the look. It just gives a more finished, clean look rather than the sharp edges. Even though technically the sharp edges look a bit more vintage, this look just looks a bit more complete. There's no other word to describe it. It just looks nicer. I want you to introduce an ellipse tool and align it to the center of the gear. And from here, I want you to make a duplicate of your text, create an outline, ungroup it, grab the R and make it larger and put it in the center of the gear. Now I want you to watch carefully. We're going to go ahead and grab our layers panel, and we're going to go ahead and find this center ellipse. From here, we're going to duplicate that center ellipse, and then we're going to lock the one at the bottom. Once we've locked the one at the bottom, we can go ahead and introduce our type and start writing whatever we want on our actual ellipse. All we're doing basically is creating a text for the inside of this the most simple way possible without having to do this manually. Grabbing the ellipse and duplicating it allows us to have a perfect center placement for this typography. Once that's complete, I want you to go ahead and add some text that relates to the motif of the logo or branding that you have currently going on. Since this is a racing sort of tee, we're doing some sort of sponsorship, so I'm going to say Factory of RHUDE or something like that. That just correlates with the design overall. Now I'm going to show you why we kept a duplicate. Go ahead and turn off the duplicate of the ellipse from before and go ahead and lock the text. Once you've got the duplicate selected, I want you to go ahead and go to Object, Path, and Offset Path. But this time I want you to put a negative offset in there just so we can have even spacing between the top of the gear and the bottom of the gear where the font is in between, so we can have a perfect balance. Like, we want the logo to look complete. Lastly, for this logo, because it is more simple in terms of the actual effects, I want you to go ahead and just play with the colors, the feel, and the actual shape. For me personally, I played with different thicknesses of the outside and also the inside line work just to see how that would look and correlate with the design. But all in, I ended up filling it in and then just using the path offset to make the letters cut out of the gear and make it one solid shape. After that was complete, I just played with a couple of colors. Now, none of these colors are final, but I'm trying to keep it cohesive as I design, because I want to think of the finished product while I design, because that's how I think mentally. So I just went with this nice little cream white color. Now for this third design, I went ahead and just traced that arrow from the Dodge logo, but made it a bit more modern. I went ahead and made just half of it and just wanted to introduce a duplicate. And once I've introduced the duplicate in itself, just by holding Option and dragging downwards, I went on transform, and I went to horizontal transform so we can align it perfectly. And from here, I just went ahead and used the alignment tool, which didn't work because I used the wrong alignment tools, and we could see where the imperfections are. I went ahead and got the direct selection tool and select the anchor points where it meets up. And then from here, you can right click and then you can press join, which makes the object join from the anchor points. And basically that's complete for this logo. All I had to do was just introduce some sort of typography, just something simple that we could fill the space from the reference in. I ended up just using the font Streetwear because it looked really nice as a text font, and it looked like something RHUDE had already used in the past. So it was a good correlation both ways. I ended up just making a smart object out of it, arranging it and bringing it to the front. And from here, I just changed the color, and I tried to make it work with this factory so it could be a more complex logo, but I ended up removing the factory and just making it RHUDE with an arrow. I think it works with the whole aesthetic, and that was design logo 3 complete. Lastly, let's finish off this motif of logos. Let's go ahead and grab a nice thick font that has a lot of presence to it. Let's go ahead and grab this one, which works really well. Let's go ahead and also change the actual kerning because I forgot to turn the kerning off. Let's go ahead and make it 5, make it a little bit more separate. And let's grab the R from design 1 because it already looks like a design element in itself. And let's go ahead and make a sort of custom wing. So with this wing, I'm going ahead and tracing this one as the base of it, just so I can get an understanding of what the actual feathers look like in terms of the design. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start freestyling my own sort of wing onto it, just to give it a more of an aggressive look that tailors towards the R from logo number 1, so we can go ahead and make it all one big cohesive logo. Now with this, I'm just holding shift as I go about, just so I can have a basis of alignment and nothing is really off. Even though the spacing in between those wings is completely off, we can go ahead and hide that by using straight lines. You know what I mean? Like, you can have that balance of something being off, but having something else that looks really clean and sharp takes your focus away from it. As long as you don't have design friends who look at your work and be like, that kerning is 100% off, start again, you can go ahead and hide behind your screen. So that's about it. Let's make this a bit bigger and make it the focal point for this design. I want you to go ahead and grab the wing and reflect it onto the other side. So that's vertical reflection and not horizontal reflection. Go ahead and put a nice safe distance between them and grab the R from design 1 and put it in the middle once you've aligned the wings together. Now you can see how well this looks even with that simple placement right there, and that's the sort of look we're going for. So basically, on the reference of the RHUDE design, they have this massive centerpiece logo in the front to almost be like the main sponsor of the design, so the main focal piece for the actual T. So that's what we're going for with this. Once you've got this aligned with the rest of your graphic, I want you to go ahead and make an offset. So once you've made your offset, I want you to set the offset color to a different color so you can actually see what you're working with. The main reason being is because we're going to go ahead and select everything and then use the shape builder tool to basically create shapes and then remove those shapes to create the final logo, if that makes sense. And to finish it off, I basically like to press Command Y to see everything to ensure that all the logo cutouts are made properly and there's no random like triangle in between the R where we use the shape builder tool. Lastly, just go ahead and select everything and use the Pathfinder to make it one piece, and go ahead and make the RHUDE logo into a outline, and then make a duplicate just in case so you don't mess up anything. And from here we can start working on the rest of the design. So this is the reference that we're working with, so let's go ahead and make adjustments to suit that. So once we have that, we're going to go ahead and introduce an ellipse. So basically we can reflect the design from the original long sleeve. They have text going around. So with this ellipse, you're going to go ahead and introduce a type on a path option. Like design 2, we're going to go ahead and add in a sort of motif that reflects the brand. So National Factory USA. Like this, once this is complete, I want you to go ahead and make a duplicate and put the duplicate underneath. So we're making a perfect circle. So once you make that duplicate, go ahead and align it using the alignment tool. Select the bottom and the top text and go ahead and align it like I said before. After you've got that complete, basically you just want to play with the sizing and kerning to ensure that all your text is shown, unless you want it to be hidden. But if you want to go for that clean look, try to keep as minimal space as possible while keeping the kerning right. Like the original design, I wanted to introduce an offset, but it ended up not working. So I ended up scrapping that and just going ahead and trying to make an ellipse from complete scratch. I went ahead and made an ellipse bigger than the text roughly, just so we could have some space on the top and the bottom. And then I went ahead and introduced a smaller ellipse while pressing Command Y so we could see where our text is. Once I finalized that the placement was okay for the size of circle that I was going for to match the reference, I went ahead and used the offset. I went ahead and used the Pathfinder tool to make a cutout and make it perfectly aligned with the rest of the graphic. Once that was complete, it was going ahead and just changing the colors just to finalize and add some final touches. And usually with me, I don't like my designs very empty, so I tried a bunch of things like offsets, bevels, different shapes to try to fill the space in between the circle and RHUDE. I ended up just scrapping all of this and just kept a simple white on top of the RHUDE and white for the background, and that completed the shape for me. Everything else was just extra and I just felt like it was not needed. But with these racing car graphics, you always want to make them super heavy for some reason, and I don't think that's just me. To finish off the design, I went ahead and introduced a custom flame completely from scratch just to play on the whole racing motif, but also have something a bit more sporty and aggressive in the design. Now this was a bit difficult because I wanted it to be like elongated flames or not the classic like swoops, because I tried the swoops before and it just looked a bit too busy for the sort of graphic I was going with. Like I said, I just want to add a bit of a touch of character and nothing too crazy that looks out of place when it comes to the rest of the design. Finishing off this flame, I had a hard time like connecting at the bottom, and I didn't really like how it was looking when it was super wide, so I went ahead and took it through a selection and made it a bit smaller and a little bit more thin. Now we come into the problem of the type running off the actual flame in itself. The way I ran around that was I basically expanded the line work, I filled it in, and then I created an offset of the full design, including the text, so it could hug the actual text on the inside. And then I just complemented it all by just putting it on top and filling it in with the contrast color blue, which seems to be the recurring motif color in the whole design. With that being complete, I just introduced a long sleeve from the Designedbywil Technical Pro Pack, and then I ended up just going ahead and playing with different placements. Now the long sleeve placement ended up working out the best, and it was more so of me trying to figure out which looked the best. But then I was like, since we're basing the whole design off the reference piece and at this point just like copying the reference piece, it just made sense to keep the same layout. So I ended up going with the same layout overall, and I'm pretty happy with how this design turned out. Overall, I would give this design a solid 7 out of 10. I feel like the garment in itself could have been a bit better, so I think a hoodie would have worked a lot better in regards to this project. But overall, the logo designs and everything like that I really love, and they could be expanded to be used on multiple pieces of clothing, which is what you try to aim for, especially when you go for these high-end luxury products. They usually have a bunch of products with the same design. So RHUDE will have like a hoodie, t-shirts, and shorts with the same design, which kind of makes sense because what if you want the design but you don't want to wear the hoodie at the moment because it's winter in your country, but you're in like vacationing in Barbados or something like that, so you want the shorts and the tee. And that was basically the whole mood I was going for with this design. Overall, I like this process and it taught me a lot, but I've already done this for multiple clients that want that luxury sort of aesthetic, so I already knew a lot of the things that were going into this project overall, and I hope you guys learned from it. I'll see you guys when I see you. Peace.